And recording started. Okay, welcome all. Here we are with Destination Imagination and the Engineering Challenge for 27-2018, titled Drop Zone. Going to be a lot of fun with this challenge this year, and for those of you who've never been around DI before, this is a little bit more of a dynamic type of loading situation going on with this challenge than we've ever had before, and I've been around this challenge for quite a while. First of all, we're just going to start the whole works up here by launching a survey for you. So tell me if you've done DI before, but never structure, or nope, you're experienced enough to be in the presentation chair here. Like to hear about that. So, okay, so we got roughly half and half. Okay, never done DI before. Now outnumbering. So, okay, good. Right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to close that poll, and I believe everybody's had a chance to get into that. And I'm going to share the results of that poll for you, and showing you that we've got some people who are a little bit new at this. Don't let that worry you. This is a great challenge, and this is a fun challenge to work on. Your kids will enjoy it. I know it. Okay, so we close that one, and I think we're going to do another poll for you as well, and let's see if I can do that. Hang on here. Nope, that wasn't what I wanted to do. Okay, next one. Have you already started team meetings? Let's launch this one. And just for the purposes of discussion, I'd like to share with you that when I manage teams, our mission was to try to get first structures built and tested during the Christmas break. And so if your team hasn't built any structures yet, don't worry, you're not too far behind. Everything's fine. But we tried to get the first structures built and tested by Christmas vacation. Chances are pretty good that that you're going to be able to get that. Okay, and I'm going to close that poll, and I'm going to share that poll with you, showing that people have been reading the challenge, and that's a good thing. But now we're going to move on to one more, and we'll do this, and then we'll get started with the meat of the presentation here. So take a look here, and we're going to launch this one. And this one always has interesting results, so we'll see how you do here. And okay, good. All right. I think that we have most of the respondents in. We're going to share that poll with you now too, so that you can see. Yeah, a little bit nervous, and I don't blame you. Quite honestly, as a structural engineer, even I was a little nervous about this challenge the first time that I got into it. Anyway, don't despair. This is going to work out, and you'll enjoy this challenge. And I'm going to tell you, I'll tell you later on to get some hearing protection for the kids, because when they're dropping these weights on top of each other, it is clangy and noisy. I'm going to demonstrate that to you in a little while. You're going to say, "Wow!" All right, so we're going to hide all that. We're going to get onto the presentation here. So this is team manager training. Team managers, it's fine if you are attending. It's fine if your co-manager is attending. And it's even okay if your team is attending. We're not going to tell you anything here that your team can't hear. So I want you to be comfortable about that. If you've got questions, there's a little questions bar over here that you can pull out questions. If you want to send a question in, we've got people online here that can type up some responses for you. If it looks like a question's good enough one that people would want to hear all over, then we'll publish that, or we'll just talk about it. Then, in addition to all of this, we're going to post this recording of this session to YouTube. We have a previous one recorded and posted to YouTube already. I would hope to get this posted to YouTube by tomorrow night, something like that. It takes a while to process the video, of course, and all of that stuff, but we'll get that going. All right, so team manager training, let's move on. Let's move on, which means I'm going to click here and do this. Okay, so what we're here to do is to help you get the best out of this that you can for your team, and to give you opportunities to check with us if there are things that concern you. So we're going to hopefully give you a better insight as to what goes on with this, and with the overview and questions and answers, and we'll talk to you about the additional resources and so forth. And then, as I told you earlier, you can, and then here is a URL of a YouTube, and this is one that we recorded back in November sometime. I think it was early November, in fact. And this webinar is the same information, but when you view it on the YouTube, you can stop it, and you can back up and go through things again, however you want to do it. So that's a really good opportunity to get a thorough understanding of what we're talking about here. So here we are in Colorado. Not all of you are. I'm Jim Serco. And that I think that the lead there really is supposed to be lead, but that's okay. Yes, they are spelled the same. And then Margaret and Colton are your Colorado ACMs, also known as Affiliate Challenge Masters. Colton is not on the broadcast tonight. He's taking a final exam. Margaret and I are here, and we have Nora, who is a emeritus ACM, joining us as well. So next up, and then Regional Challenge Masters for different regions. I know that we have some people from Western Slope on here. You'll contact Carrie Smith, and you'll find those others. Those other people are here. So if you don't get a chance to write down email addresses for everybody as we're going through this right now, you can always go to the YouTube video, and it's on there. So take a look at that. All right, next challenge, or next slide. So we want to thank you, team managers. We have all been team managers. We know what it's about. It's tough work, quite honestly. And when you graduate from being a team manager, maybe your kids graduate high school and you think, well, maybe I got one more thing I can do for DI. You can always come back here and be an appraiser or even a challenge master, and I'm going to tell you, it's a lot more fun than being a team manager. It's a lot less work. You get to see a lot of teams' interpretation of a solution for the challenges. And then thank your team. This is a great thing for them to do. I hate to make a metaphor about sports, but this is sports for kids who have some creativity and some interest in doing things. And then remember too that your team is not going to solve this challenge and have a world-class solution in a matter of a month. It's just not going to happen. And so you take little bits at a time. When they have a success, make sure that they understand that you're impressed with their success. And in this challenge, if they can make a structure that holds up the crusher board, and I'll explain to you what a crusher board is later on, or a pressure board, there's other names for it, but when that thing holds a board or a textbook or anything, they've solved the challenge. Now they just need to fine-tune themselves to become world-class in their presentation, in their structure building capabilities, and all of that stuff. And you know what? We've had some of the most successful teams have had some of the most, or some of the least, I'm not going to use the word competent, but less technical team managers than you'd believe. And the kids solve the challenges, and the team managers stand back and just shake their heads and go, I don't know how they did that. I don't know how they did it. But anyway, it's a great time. It's fun to do that.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, what?
Not interrupt. I'm sorry. This is Margaret.
Hi.
Nora and I are not able to see the slides, and I'm not sure if anybody else can see them as well. After the polls went to drop,
you know what?
team manager.
Okay. Here's what we're going to do. Now, can you see them? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Let me
Brilliant. Great.
Let me back up here just a little bit, and I'll just show you quickly on the slides. Did you get some questions about that?
Nora and I did.
All right. I didn't see those questions come through here. Well, thank you for letting me know. All right. So anyway, I'm going to run through those first couple of slides here, and when we post this up here, you'll be able to find that YouTube, the previous one, and then you'll also find on that same channel, you'll find the new YouTube recording. I'm so sorry I forgot to show the screen. I got so excited I remembered to start the recording that I forgot to show the screen. How's that? So anyway, email addresses for your Colorado Challenge Masters and for the regional Challenge Masters in different regions around Colorado. Take a look at those on the website whenever we go. And I talked earlier, and I talked about success and what's in here for the kids and what they do and is learn to think creatively. They learn problem solving, decision making. They learn how to work on teams. That's such a big deal anymore in the workplace. I've got a couple of businesses, and teamwork is a great thing, and it's an important thing. And I've employed some people who were excellent technicians but couldn't work on a team. And unfortunately, guys like that are people that we can't have in a business. So citizenship, personal social responsibility, all of these things that you see on here are big deals. And this is where it starts, learning to have these kids learn how to creatively think, how to not take it personally if their ideas aren't used in the solution of a problem or a challenge. So these are important things. So at this point, I think I would like to have Margaret take over and tell you about the challenge a little bit.
Great. So this challenge, it's a challenge overview. It sounds like everybody's already read the challenge. So this is a little bit repetitive, but your team is going to design and build a freestanding structure that's going to be placed on the structure tester and tested during the team's presentation time. The team will have 8 minutes basically to present their story and do their testing all simultaneously. It'll be an integrated presentation where the testing is actually integrated to their story, ideally. They'll test how much weight the structure can hold and how much impact it can withstand. The pressure board and the first weight are stacked on the structure. After the first weight is placed, they're going to drop all additional weights on the weight stack one at a time atop the pressure board from a designated height. And that designated height, Jim's going to show you a handy-dandy video of the structure tester, but it'll be marked very clearly at the top of the structure tester pole. They're going to.
Anytime you want me to show pictures of the tester base, let me know. Maybe that's better later on, but anytime you want to do that, just call for me and we'll make it happen. Go ahead.
It's going to come up in a few slides, so you all will be able to see it. They're going to create and present a story about a sudden event that has a dramatic impact. You can see the theme here. They're going to design and create an event depictor that uses technical methods to visibly or audibly depict the sudden event within the story. And you'll notice that technical methods is initial capped, and so you'll be able to find that definition, which is pretty broad, in the challenge, and I believe in the rules of the road, but definitely in the challenge. They'll integrate the story with the weight placement testing of the structure, and they're going to create and present 2 team choice elements that basically showcase the team's interest, skills, area of strengths, and talents. And we're going to get into that later, but this is all a little bit repetitive from the challenge itself, basically straight from the challenge. There'll be a maximum of $150 expense, and that's the value of the challenge and performance items that are actually taken onto the performance area. You'll probably spend more than $150 over the course of practicing and planning, and they'll buy some things and not use all of it, but it's $150 is not the total amount you spent. It's $150 is just the value, and some of it we prorated, of what's crossing that launch line and being presented on stage. So if you buy, you know, a roll of butcher paper and they only use 20 feet of it, you don't need to put down as an expense the cost of the entire roll of butcher paper. You prorate it, basically. You decide, you know, I use 20 feet out of a 100-foot roll, and it's, you know, a fifth of the cost. They have 8 minutes for the presentation and the structure testing. Now we'll go to the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what,
That'd be
I don't know the butcher from here.
That would be my cue.
Right.
Sorry about that. All right, how's that?
Great. So in the challenge, you'll have a glossary. And everybody, it sounds like, has read the challenge, so this is probably not new news. I'm a little bit repetitive. The structure is a team-designed and built creation to meet the criteria outlined in each year's challenge. It does vary from year to year. The structure tester and the tester base is a device used to test the performance capability of the structure. There's a little picture of it to the right, to meet the specific year's challenge. The structure of the tester and the tester base, those never change. I've never seen, this has been the same. My kids did it all through, from grade school all through high school, and now they've graduated from college. So this structure tester base is the tester base. And if your team is going to do this kind of challenge, or if you think somebody in your school is going to do it, it's a great idea to get one of these as soon as possible. You can have somebody else make it. It's not interference. You can have a grandfather, or, you know, a dad, or you can make it, or you're, you know, can hire it made, which is what I did. I'm a handyman, and then make it. But the sooner you can get a structure tester and a tester base, you can borrow them as well. I think the sooner the kids can start testing, and it just gives them a lot of flexibility and freedom to test as often as possible. The pressure board is a square, flat wooden plate that's placed atop the structure to facilitate the testing. It's usually about 10 pounds. We round up or down, we just call it a 10-pounder. The safety pole is a 1-inch by 24-inch metal pole that's used to ensure the pressure board lands on the safety supports if the structure fails. This is a safety issue. It also just keeps things in a controlled environment. And the testing is the process of subjecting a structure to various forces to the point of failure in order to score the maximum number of points. So we will test these to failure. If they don't break during the 8 minutes, they will be broken, because the judges are going to want to make sure that the structure components comply with the requirements of the challenge. So now we go to the next, still more glossary, the rules of the road. If the team is not familiar with the rules of the road yet, or doesn't have a copy printed out, I highly recommend you get one of those sooner than later. They will need to refer to the rules of the road for questions periodically, and it's just a good idea to keep one on hand for practices. It applies to all the challenges. It contains guidance on basic principles for all the challenges. You know, what kind of items are exempt, for instance. A lot of times instruments, you know, musical instruments are exempt. So it'll just tell you all the different, you know, the rules of the road are basically, it's just a really good thing to have. They have questions on basic overview for DI. Tournament data form is required. It should be on the back of the challenge, one of the last pages of the challenge. It helps the appraisers identify the required elements of your challenge. And we really do use those. Every appraiser will get a copy of your team's tournament data form that they bring. That's why you bring 5. And they read them before your team actually goes on and to present. And that way it does 2 things. It kind of gives them a preview of what your team wants them to look for. And because we're trying to give the teams as many points as possible and really give them the benefit of the doubt, that the team should complete that, you know, use some time to complete that. Complete it with care, not do it 5 minutes before they go on. And sadly, I've seen that happen sometimes. So do try to have them do that ahead of time. It also helps the appraisers figure out if there's any questions they might have of the team before they go on, which is very useful. Expense report lists and costs out all items brought onto the performance area the day of the tournament to ensure it's under the limit of 150. Creativity, the extent to which they make something their own, and it's unique and uniquely theirs. And integration, you'll hear this, we'll all use this term a lot. Integration is the extent to which one aspect of the presentation depends on the other aspects of the presentation and or works together with the other aspects. So that's something the team really is going to want to give some thought to. How to make one, basically you don't want the structure testing not to be related to the story. And how they figure out a way to integrate the structure testing with the story will require some creativity and some thought on their part, but that is what really differentiates the strong teams, is the integration being really well thought out and well presented. Okay, and then we get to the story, which is the next channel. Okay, I'm looking at two different screens. They're going to create and present a story about a sudden event that has a dramatic impact. The story can be set in any location, real or imaginary, and in any time period. They are going to design and create the event depictor that uses technical methods to visibly or audibly depict the sudden event within the story. And they're to design and build all parts of the event depictor using their own ideas and skills. Commercially produced items can be incorporated into it, but for scoring, the appraisers are only going to consider the team's changes or additions. Technical methods must be used to initiate and or operate the event depictor. And technical methods, this is something that the team really will want to think about, and you'll want to think about as far as exposing them to different ideas of what technical methods are. They refer to the use of principles from fields such as chemistry, computer science, electricity, hydraulics, mechanical or structural engineering, and physics. Other technical fields are also acceptable. But this is a good opportunity for the team manager to really educate the children on these principles. That's not to say that you'll tell them what to do, but the DI is a learning process, so you want to expose them to concepts of physics and concepts of maybe chemistry or electricity. So all of those things, if they're interested in it, you can expose them to basic concepts, and you should. Your team is going to earn points for technical innovation and technical design based on all technical methods used or attempted during the presentation. And they'll want to integrate the structure testing into the story. It's sounding a little bit repetitive, I'm sure. Integration. Yes, Jeff.
And you'll notice that the text does run off the bottom of everybody's screen. It's not just your computer if you're thinking it's yours, okay? All right. Next.
Right, so I have it actually up on a different computer because it's running off the bottom of my screen. So sorry if I keep going on and on. But the story considerations. The story should use effective storytelling, meaning it has a beginning, middle, and end, and it's easy to follow. Remember that your appraisers are not going to know your story except from your data form ahead of time. So the clearer and the easier it is to follow, the better it's going to be for the team. A story is more creative when there's an original or novel development of the storyline and of the characters. Tips for the team managers. It's great to use, educate the team on how to brainstorm and encourage them to do team brainstorming. The story add-on exercise is kind of one of the basic go-tos. One team member starts the story and the next member continues it and so forth. It's almost like a game of, is it telephone that everybody used to play where you start one thing and you keep going? Story scoring. The judges or the appraisers are going to look for the creativity of the story. And you can look actually on your challenge at the very end. It'll show how the points are broken out. And we'll probably see this in another slide later. But that's a really great tool for the team, is to actually pull that up. I used to actually take the challenge and kind of paste that page up where it shows how the points are given. And I'd have the team score themselves on how creative they thought their story was on the different elements, and they could give themselves points. And they're better self-critiquers than almost anybody. And that's a good way for them to kind of do a check periodically during the season as they get closer to competition, to kind of identify areas they want to improve or identify things they want to work on. Dramatic impact of a sudden event is up to 20 points. Integration of the story with the structure testing is up to 15 points. Technical innovation of the event depictor up to 30 points. And technical design of the event depictor is also up to 30 points. So your total story is going to be up to 120 points. The story is going to be worth quite a bit this year, as opposed to in the past, sometimes the structure testing has put more points on the weight held. And this year, and it's been moving toward in this direction over the years, but you're going to see, especially because of this impact drop, I think we're anticipating seeing, the story is going to be really critical. I mean, everything's critical, so but the story is definitely going to be a big differentiator, I think, especially for this challenge. Then the next thing is the team choice element. These are scored separately. These are not part of the story. It's almost like a free form. This is an opportunity for the team to identify things that they want to show off or showcase that are not required elements of their story of the challenge. It certainly should be integrated. These should be integrated into their solution and into their, probably into their solution for the challenge, but it's not, this is kind of an unlimited opportunity. It shows off their interests, their skills, their areas of strengths or talents. We've seen everything. You'll see the sky's the limit. I mean, I can't even go into how creative some of these teams have gotten into, but I mean, you can start with basic things. Maybe the team are really good at singing, or maybe they're really good at playing an instrument or dance or something like that. Those are the types of things you often see the team sort of brainstorming on different talents they might have. And there are talents that go way beyond that. They may be creative on how they identify their talent. I had a team one year that they decided they were really good. They were really most proud of how they organized their setup, and it was sort of choreographed. Actually, it was kind of unusual, and they decided that was going to be one of their team choice elements. If you do something, they need to make sure it's really clearly identified for the judges. So the presentations are going to include 2 separately scored creations called team choice elements. They may not be something that's already scored as part of the central challenge. So as an example, and this is a simple example, they couldn't use their event depictor as a team choice element because that's already a scored item. The team choice elements must be presented during that 8-minute presentation, so it must be part of their 8-minute presentation. And integration, again, it should have a meaningful connection to their central challenge solution. Let's see. The team choice elements, let's see, the next team choice element considerations. The team may create anything they wish for a team choice element. They could identify props, technical gadgets, but not the event depictor, costumes, music, special effects, physical actions, anything. Encourage the teams to share their interests and talents with each other. Sometimes, if they don't know each other very well, they may not do that as easily, as quickly, but instant challenges are great opportunities for the team to sort of self-evaluate on what somebody is good at or to share their interests and talents. Encourage full participation, even if not all interests or talents are going to be formally appraised. And the team members are good at identifying what other kids are talented at, and often are also good at figuring out how their talents might combine with other people's talents or not, but it's just good for them to engage in discussion and engage in sharing with each other. That's part of the teamwork. Encourage them to appraise their own performance challenge and uncover any gaps or overlap in scored items. And my team would do that. We used to do that a lot. They would actually critique. One person might set aside and critique, or several. And that was actually, they're probably a little more critical than any of us on what they do. For the team choice element scoring, it may not be a specific item already scored in the central challenge. However, if it's something that's a single distinguishable part of a required item, they could use it. If they do something like this, it must be able to be evaluated as a standalone item. And while they can present both elements simultaneously, it's important that each one can be evaluated, identified, and scored separately. This gets into a really kind of it's almost splitting hairs sometimes. It really is important that they're going to do something like this and they decide they want to have a team choice element that it's part of a required item. It needs to be something they can really explain clearly, because the appraisers are going to see a lot of teams come through, and if they can't identify easily how this is separate, it's not, they're not going to give as many points. We want to give them as many points as possible. So team choice elements, they're going to get points for creativity and originality, quality, workmanship, and effort, and integration to the presentation. So as an example, let's say a team picks their backdrop or their backdrop. They should look and see, well, is it creative and original? Like, how creative and original is it? And they should evaluate their quality, workmanship, and effort in that particular team choice element, and also whether it has a meaningful connection to the presentation. All right. Any questions so far? Am I just the structure specifications? Does anybody have any, Jim, or
No,
anybody?
You're coming through loud and clear, and we're understanding what you're talking about, so all sounds good.
I know I'm probably going through this fast, so ask questions if you need to. The structure specifications, it must be a single freestanding structure, so it can't be several structures. It's one structure. It must fit completely within the structure tester and be able to stand on the tester-based mock-up without team member assistance. So it can't be leaning against somebody's finger. It must be built only from the list of approved materials and must have an opening that easily accepts a circular column running the entire height of the structure. So the outside diameter of the column is going to be different for each level. So elementary, it's going to be 2 inches. Middle level, it's going to be 3.5, and secondary, the diameter of the column has to be 4.5. I'm not sure how many people have elementary, middle, and secondary, but there are some kind of good, easy ways to get one of these columns so the team can check their structures. The elementary, I believe, Colton had said there was was it a muffler pipe or some kind of pipe?
A muffler pipe is a good 2-inch diameter muffler pipe you can get from a kind of scrap that you can get from Midas or somewhere like that.
Right. And middle and secondary, the 3.5 and 4.5 inch, I believe there's a PVC pipe at Home Depot. There are 2 different PVC pipes that are exactly the 3.5 and 4.5 inch.
Yeah, there's a 3-inch pipe and it's a 4-inch pipe, and the outside diameters are 3.5 and 4.5 inches, as I understand it. I haven't actually gone there and measured, quite honestly.
Right. So that's a good thing to have on site for your team, along with a structure tester base. The weight for all of the for the structures is the same for every level, 175 grams. It applies to all competition levels, and the height has to be a minimum of 7.5 inches and no more than 9 inches. And that height is because the posts on the tester base are 7 inches, so it has to be at least 7.5 inches so that at least there's a gap, so you're not automatically touching. And then 9 inches is the top. The structure materials. These are the permitted materials they can use to build their structure this year. And every year it's a little bit different. This year it's wood, which is a natural substance found under the bark of any type of tree, and it must be 100% natural. What's not acceptable is bamboo and man-made substances that simulate natural wood. So, for an example, they can't use plywood, fiberboard, or commercially available laminates. They may make their own laminates, but they cannot purchase laminates. And a laminate is basically just pieces of wood glued together. So if they choose to make laminate, that's okay, but they can't purchase commercially available laminate.
So laminate could be also called plywood, is that correct?
Yes.
So the team can make their own plywood if they choose to.
Right.
Yes.
They may use monofilament fishing line, which is any commercially available single-strand, non-metallic fishing line of any weight or diameter. They need to bring their original packaging. If they don't bring the original packaging to the competition, they will have to remove any fishing line from the structure. So make sure they remember to bring the original packaging for any of the fishing line that they may choose to use. Cork is the natural outer tissue of the cork oak used to make cork board sheets. Synthetic cork is not allowed. And synthetic cork, as an example, you may have seen those wine wine stoppers that are they look a little plasticky. That's synthetic cork. So they use natural cork if they use cork. They don't have to use all of these. These are just what they can choose from. Then latex-free rubber bands. Commercially available continuous loop of rubber used to hold items together. Here are the thicknesses and the unstretched loop length and the unstretched length when cut. So there are the specifications. Again, like the monofilament fishing line, the original packaging must be provided. And again, if they don't bring the original packaging to competition, they will be asked to remove any rubber band. And one of the things for that is we need to make sure it's latex free. So that's why they need to bring the original packaging. They may use glue, any commercially available adhesive material that is applied in liquid form and capable of creating a permanent bond. There are lots of different glues out there they might choose from. They can use a two-part epoxy, Gorilla Glue. There's probably several varieties of Gorilla Glue. Lots of varieties of super glue, hot glue, and glues that use an accelerant. So basically, it has to be commercially available. It has to be applied in liquid form, and it must be capable of creating a permanent bond. All right. Any questions? Are we still going? Still good? All right. Structure specifications. Any or all of the materials that we just showed on the last two slides may be used. They don't have to use all of them. They may use any of them. And they may use all of them. But more than one size or type of each of the materials may also be used, as long as it meets the specifications, as long as it meets that criteria. Then it may be, then any one, more than one type or size or type may be of that material may be used. Team-made laminates are allowed. Commercially available laminates are not permitted. The structure must not be soaked in anything other than water. If it is soaked in water, the structure must be dry on tournament day. And the structure may be marked with a pencil, ink, pen, and markers. However, it may not be painted, stained, varnished, or otherwise coated. So a lot of times when they're building, they might mark spots on the structure just as part of their measuring and as part of their, part of their building process. But what is not permitted is basically decorating the structures, painting it, staining it, varnishing, or coating it with something. Designing and building a structure. The teams are encouraged to build and test structures prior to the tournament date. And like Jim said, it'd be great if they can start doing them as soon as possible over this break. The sooner they start building and testing the structures, the more successful they usually are, because they learn from building and testing them. They learn what works and what doesn't work. They also gain a lot of confidence. They learn what processes for building and testing work well for them, and especially with this one where they're testing with impact, the sooner they can start doing that too, probably the better. Just gives them a lot more confidence, and usually you can use it as sort of a, I used to use it, my team would get so excited about building and testing when once they finally kind of got used to it, that I would have to have them wait till the end of practice to get anything else done. I'd say, okay, well, if you can get most of your play work done for the first hour, then you can test afterwards. And the whole team, even if they weren't builders, wanted to watch the structure testing, and it was sort of the carrot that I used. The tests are performed using an actual tester base. Those will tell you how to find the specs for that if you want to have somebody build it, or if you can find one in a school that is not using one, those are also useful. The team members must do all the tooling or shaping of the structure themselves. They can use jigs. If they use a jig, it must be team created. And a jig is basically a device used to replicate the same piece or pattern again and again. It's like a pattern. It could be a tool, it could be a drawing. Sometimes my team actually used to use just drawings sometimes on graph paper, but that way they at least could replicate their design. If they wanted to test a certain design or make tweaks to it, they knew they could replicate the measurements each time. But there's all sorts of things they could use for a jig. That's just one example, as long as they create the jig themselves. And the structure testing procedure. when the structure is checked in, it's going to have to meet the height criteria. And basically what's going to happen is they're going to go to the tournament that day, and basically two of the team members will go in for the check-in. And the check-in is going to be a table with some appraisers who are going to have a sample tester base and a pole, and they're not going to touch the team structure. The team is going to, the two members who go to check it in, they'll be responsible for basically showing the appraiser that it fits over the pole, that it's the right height. They'll measure the height, but we won't touch the structure itself. When it's placed on the structure tester, the structure may make contact only with the top surface of the tester base, the bottom surface of the pressure board, and the safety pole. And that's also something, the more that they can practice making sure that it meets the criteria ahead of time, that's very important as well for them to do. So I used to make that as part of kind of the practice. They would bring in their structures and they would actually measure and test, measure the structure, make sure they'd weigh it, and then they would actually then test it. The structure testing procedure. I think it's the next slide. Jim, let's see. Hey, Jim. Hello? Hello? Jim? Nora?
I'm here. You're fine.
I was going to see if Jim could move the slide.
To change it. Maybe. Do you have the other slides that you can progress to in the meantime? Oh, I see.
He's not, because he's showing the tester base. Okay, so he's going over there. This is great. So this is what the tester base looks like. I just want to make sure everybody could hear me. So this is what the tester base looks like. You can see the 24-inch pole. And at the top of the tester base, Jim's going to come show you. It's a little slow-mo. There he's shown. At the top of the tester base, at the top of the pole, is an area that's in a lighter green, and you can see that's where the weights are going to be dropped from this year. So the weights, once the pressure board is on and the first weight is on, after that, he's going to demonstrate. So they're going to carefully put the first weight on, and then, well, they probably will carefully put it on. But then after that, they're not going to be careful. After that, or maybe they'll be careful about dropping, but they can't. They have to drop from that height right there. And you can also assume that you've got a structure underneath there as well. Probably did this out of order. But that's the structure tester. Jim's going to show you where the structure would go with a fake structure. I think I jumped the gun. He probably wanted to show you everything in order. So here is that's the pressure board, our 10-pound presumed pressure board. And the kids are going to put their structure over the pole right there. That's a pretend structure, but you see how it's more than 7.5 inches up to 9. Then they're going to put the pressure board on top of the structure. And they can do that carefully if they want. And then they can, if they want, put this first weight on carefully, just like that. And after that, they're going to drop the weights from the light green mark. And this is at the regional tournament. At state, they're going to have 12 more inches with a similar light green mark, 12 inches higher than that one. And at globals, it'll actually go up 12 more inches after that. There it is. Too bad we don't have sound so you can hear how loud it is. All right. Yep, I think we're good. So now he's going to come back and switch the slides. Does anybody have any questions on that? All right. So then you have the structure testing procedure. Actually, the next slide is what we're going to do, which is after, that's the first part, that's the first slide for structure testing procedure, and the next slide is a continuation of that. The teams may remove, the teams may remove the safety shields that I probably should have shown you, but there's some clear safety shields, and they're there just so that when the structures break, that wood isn't flying everywhere, because it will fly, especially with this one. But they may remove the safety shields to place their structure, but they must put them into place after the pressure board is placed, before any additional weights are added. The first weight added will be the 10-pound pressure board. The first weight after the pressure board will be a 10-pound weight placed atop the pressure board, which I think Jim demonstrated earlier. All subsequent weights, either 5 pounds or 10 pounds, are going to be dropped from the drop zone. In this drawing, it's at the top. You can see 1.5 inches from the top of the pole. The weights are going to be, we'll have available at every tournament will be 10 5-pound weights and 10 10-pound weights at all tournaments, irrespective of whether it's globals or state or regionals. Those are the weights that will be provided. So it's a little bit simpler this year as far as having your weights available for the kids to test with. You really only need, 5 and 10-pound weights. All right, so the next slide, we're going to explain where the drop zone is. The drop zone is the area on the safety pole between 1/2 inch and 2 inches below the top of the safety pole, or the topmost safety pole extension in place at the tournament. So if it's the state tournament or the global tournament, it is going to be, there are going to be 2 extension poles, 2 for globals and 1 for the affiliate. But right now you just want to focus on the regionals. So it's 12 inches with the top 1.5 inches being the drop zone. The dropped weights must free fall onto the weight stack atop the pressure board. Any weight not dropped from within the drop zone or that is interfered with during the free fall will not count towards the official weight held. The weight placement appraiser is going to indicate if a weight was incorrectly or inappropriately dropped. So when your team is at the tournament, we actually have a separate weight placement appraiser that will be there right next to the pressure, the weight tester when the team is dropping their weight, and they will indicate whether the weight was incorrectly or inappropriately dropped. And they're going to introduce themselves, just so your kids don't get freaked out. They will introduce themselves to the team before they actually go on and perform. So they're going to know who's who, and they're going to be able to tell them what to expect. So just so you know, it's not like they have to worry about that. The weight placement appraiser is actually really helpful in the sense that that's all they're there to do, is to indicate if the weights are incorrectly or inappropriately dropped and to count which weights were dropped. Incorrectly or inappropriately dropped weights may be removed and redropped. So they can choose to redrop them if they didn't do it correctly the first time. At the regional tournament, there's not going to be extension pipe. I think we talked about that. That will be used. The drop zone will be on the safety pole. At an affiliate tournament, and that's a state tournament, 1 extension pole is going to be used. So the drop zone will still be located at the top, but it's going to be located at the top of the extension pole. The pole will be in place initially and may not be moved. At the global finals tournament, there'll be 2 extension poles, and the drop zone is going to be located on the top of the topmost extension. So both extensions will be in place initially and may not be moved at the globals. But right now, obviously, just focus on the regionals. If your team does not, this is structure testing, which is the next. Yeah. Actually, I already went through that one. Sorry, I went really too fast. Okay, if your team does not drop at least 1 weight successfully, your team is going to receive an official weight held of 0. So that means they need to get the pressure board on, and they need to get 1 10-pound weight on, and then they're going to need to drop at least 1 weight successfully to get any official weight held. A successful dropped 5-pound weight is going to earn them 20 pounds impact bonus, which is basically 25 pounds towards the total weight held. A successfully dropped 10-pound weight is going to earn them a 40-pound impact bonus. So that'll equal 50 pounds towards the total weight held. The structure must also meet the physical specifications. If it's not in compliance, the weight held ratio is going to be 0. So if they come in like a 7-inch, a 7-inch high structure, then it's gonna they're not going to be able to test it. They'll have a weight held ratio of 0. Let's see. Jim just said his microphone died. Okay. But it's going to be fixed.
Am I coming?
Okay.
Am I coming through now?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, thank you.
So the next slide is talking about what to expect when they get there.
Hang on.
Okay, Jim,
Here we go.
go to the next. Yep. One before that, please.
One before that, okay.
Yep, that one. So we're going to have at the tournament, we're going to mark a zone around the structure tester base. And it's 2 feet from the structure tester on all 4 sides. And within that zone, and it will be marked, so the team will not be aware of where that 2 feet ends. But in that zone, the team members all must wear protective eyewear. And they must bring their own protective eyewear. Regular sunglasses and eyeglasses are not going to count as protective eyewear. This year, because of the dropping and because of the potential for, I guess, wood flying everywhere, or wood and other materials flying everywhere, it's really important. We can't give on this. They need to bring their own protective eyewear, and anybody who is going to be in that zone is going to need to have that protective eyewear on. Now, that doesn't mean every team member has to have the protective eyewear on. Only the ones who are going to be within that zone during the presentation will need to have that eyewear on while they're in that zone. Again, they must provide their own protective eyewear. If for some reason they forget, they're going to need to make friends with somebody else who might have some and hopefully get to borrow some. But we are not going to be able to provide that for them. So it would behoove them to go ahead and get that, and to make sure they practice having it. It's something that they know they need to have. To count towards the weight held, the structure is going to have to hold the weight for 3 seconds. The weight held appraiser is going to count those 3 seconds. So after the weights, for instance, are dropped, they're going to count 3 seconds before that weight is going to count. But the teams don't have to wait 3 seconds before dropping additional weights. Now, this is a strategy issue. If they are confident that they don't need to wait the 3 seconds and everything is going to count, then they're welcome to do it. There's a risk, obviously, but that's something that's for the team to decide how they want to do that. And also, it'd be pretty fast to do it, faster than that, but I guess if they want to, they can. Okay, the structure testing is going to end when the team elects to stop weight placement, or when the pressure board or the structure touches any of those 4 support posts on that tester. It will end when the top of the weight stack reaches the bottom of that drop zone. So when the top of the weight stack gets up to 1.5 inches from the top of the pole, they're not going to be able to place any more weights. Or the 8-minute time limit expires. So that's when the structure testing is going to end. The teams may use the full 8-minute presentation time for weight placement and drops, regardless of whether or not they've ended their story presentation. And we've seen this happen. A story may end, and the teams are still testing. We could also have a situation maybe where the testing ends and the story hasn't finished. So the team needs to really think about all the different possibilities and how they want their story and their presentation to work with that testing. And finally, the team may continue their story presentation if time remains within the 8-minute time limit, even if the structure has failed. All right, Jim, are you going to do?
Well, I thought for a moment about just being very silent to see what would happen. But, okay.
Jim gets to now.
don't ask me why the microphone died in the middle. I just scramble here. I think we got it covered. Am I coming through okay? Are you hearing me okay?
Yes.
Hello. Okay, good. All right. So now the scoring for the structure, and Margaret, I think you need to get a drink of water. Quite honestly, you've been talking a lot here while I've been lazing around, forgetting to change your slides. So the official weight held is the weight of the pressure board plus all successfully placed and dropped weights plus impact bonuses. And note that the impact bonuses are different for 5-pound weights than they are for 10-pound weights. So the team may want to strategize how they're going to approach that. The weight held ratio is the official weight held in pounds, and that weight held in pounds is defined above. That's the pressure board, all successfully placed and dropped weights plus bonuses. That's the weight held in pounds divided by the structure weight in grams. Okay, so we don't usually divide pounds by grams unless we make a mistake when we're trying to send a spacecraft out to the moon, but this is what happens. So the weight held ratio, then, the higher the weight held in pounds is, and the lower the structure weight is, will net higher weight held ratios. And your team would like to have the highest weight held ratio of the tournament, of course, because the highest weight held ratio receives 120 points, and then scores for other teams are going to be their weight held ratio divided by the highest weight held ratio in their level times 120 points. So if, for example, a team has a weight held ratio of 10, and they are the highest in say the elementary school division, they have a weight held ratio of 10, they'll receive 120 points if they're the highest weight held ratio. The weight held ratio for the other teams, let's say that we had another team that had a weight held ratio of 5. So then the formula down here would read the weight held ratio for the team in question, that would be 5, divided by the highest weight held ratio, that's 10, and that's going to end up being a half of times 120, or that would be a 60-point weight held ratio. So the team will want to make sure that they get their weight held ratios as high as possible. That is the way to win this challenge, is to get the highest weight held ratio, at least in the structure testing division. As Margaret pointed out earlier, we believe the story is going to be pretty critical this year, because dropping these weights from those heights, the height I showed you, the height that it would drop from at the regional level. The state level is going to be 12 inches higher than that, and at globals it's going to be 24 inches higher than that. So we're going to see a lot of smash structures, and we're going to see a lot of zero weight held. So today, more importantly than many years before, that story and the integration of the story and the testing together are going to become important. So watch those things. And then the team choice elements are going to be a big deal too, because they're added together with that stuff later on. I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Okay, so I was going to criticize Margaret because she didn't advance this slide for me, but now I realize I have to do that myself. Okay, and here is an example of how structure scoring might go for teams A through H. You can see structural weights there in the first column, and if I was a little slicker with this, I could show you, but you can see where my mouse is running here, structure weights for each of the different teams here. You can see that the lowest structure weight is 40 grams. So 40 grams is the lowest structure weight. And then the pressure board plus the 10 pounds, they get 21 points for that. Successful 10 pounders, they get 4 points for 4 of those. As you can see, the official weight held is going to be, and here on Team G, they got the highest official weight held. That includes the pressure board and the impact bonuses and the weights themselves. So they have the highest official weight held. The highest weight held ratio, however, is neither of those teams. Not that it always works out this way, but sometimes it will. But in this case, the weight held ratio for Team D is 7.21. And it's the highest weight held ratio. And you can see that Of course, since they're the highest weight held ratio, they're going to get 100% of that 120 points. Where did my mouse go? And they're going to get 100% of that 120 points over here. And you can see that Team E was close at 7.18, and this is the ratio I talked to you about a little while ago about how to calculate the percentage of the adjusted score. And in the case of Team H, and where they had a 0 weight held score, they end up with a 0% of 120, or a 0 number there. So it's not always the team that holds the most weight. It's not always the team that has the lightest structure. It's the team that has a balance and can make the structure accept the beating that they're going to give it out there on the stage. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, so that is just an idea of what a sample scoring matrix might look like. Here's the overall scoring for the day. Watch this. Central challenge is going to be the story, and the central challenge is what they present on stage. And this is most of what they present on stage, and I'll clarify that in just a minute. So the story is going to be 50% of the score of what they get on stage, and the structure weight held ratio is 50% of the score they get on stage. So the score on stage is the story and the weight held ratio. There are also team choice elements presented on stage too. Now those are scored differently, and in fact, when you look at the overall impact of the team choice elements on the scoring, they are significant, even though they only look like 15% here. That's 15% of the entire day's score that the team will get. That's a big deal. And really, when you look at in the central challenge, 60% of the score for the entire day is the central challenge. 15% is that. That totals up 75% with the team choice elements and the central challenge. Look what comes up next. Instant challenge. 25% of that day's score. And I'm going to tell you that over the years, we have seen teams that have an outstanding story. They've got an outstanding structure, but they blow it in instant challenge. Oh man, a second place team can be dropped to 6th place faster than you think. So my advice is work with your teams on instant challenge. It's a big deal. And you can have a little fun with it too. There are instant challenge packages you can get if you go to the team manager training, or even online you can find some instant challenge ideas. And they're usually done with bits of whatever is available for building, for presenting. I know that we used to have a lot more verbal instant challenges than we do nowadays, but that used to be fun. When my kids were in school, they were pretty verbal people, and they came up with some pretty interesting and entertaining instant challenge solutions. It was a lot. So keep in mind that it's not all about the weight held ratio. It's not all about the story, but those are both big deals. And those result in 60% of the day's score, 15% added in for team choice elements. So make sure your team comes with team choice elements identified and clearly identified, so that we can give them the points that we want them to have. Instant challenge, don't forget it. It's a big deal. And on the issue of what goes on during the tournament day, team's going to arrive there. I would make sure that, especially if you're going out of town, some of you are from some remote areas, make sure that the team gets there in plenty of time. Honestly, I'd like to arrive with the team at least 2 hours before their presentation time. That gives them a chance to get a little bit acclimated to what's going on in the venue, as well as time that they can kind of relax and get ready for their presentation. Structure check-in 1 hour before the team's presentation time. So there are several time things to be thought about here. One is the check-in of the structure, an hour before the team's presentation time. And during that hour, if the structure does not meet the specifications right away, the teams will be given a chance to bring it into compliance. I've seen teams do a lot of damage and reconstruction on their structures right there at the table as we're weighing them in and checking for compliance with sizes and all of that stuff. I've seen some pretty amazing Phoenix-related rebirths of some of these structures. And the biggest offense that we find, quite honestly, is the ability for the structure to fit down, easily fit down over a 2-inch diameter cylinder. And that's, in most years, it's 2-inch diameter. This year, of course, we got 2-inch for the elementary schools, 3.5 for middle schools, and 4.5 for high schools. Those are going to be, those things I think are going to be a challenge because some teams are not going to be able to meet those. But that's the biggest offense we find teams get into when checking in structures. I've checked in a lot of structures in a lot of different venues, including Globals. So once the structure is successfully checked in, the check-in appraisers will hold that structure, usually seal it in a bag or a box or something like that. And then the team goes away from the check-in area, and then it's time. Get ready, get costumed. In fact, those kids that aren't checking the structure in ought to be getting into costume, into makeup, hair, whatever they're doing. Get that stuff going, because once this project starts rolling here an hour before the presentation time, it goes and goes and goes, and it's not going to, time is not going to slow down for you. So the teams need to be prepared to do these things. Also, team managers, make sure that the team is doing the preparations for the performance. And what I'm talking about is costuming, fixing hair, putting on makeup or eyeliner, whatever kinds of things that they're doing for makeup, for hair, for presentation, just their costuming, getting the props ready. Please don't let us catch you, team managers, working on the props on behalf of the kids. Not fair, and we don't like it. So let's just leave it there. Don't do it, okay? So 20 minutes before, the team is going to come to the prep area. That's 20 minutes before the performance. Personally, I like them there 30 minutes before the performance. Then the check-in appraiser at prep area is going to ask them, okay, let's talk about your skip, let's talk about this and that. And that's where we collect the paperwork. That paperwork is the tournament data form. It's the it's the signature on the paper where they indicate that nobody helped them with the solution of the challenge. And then there's also the cost sheet that they'll show what their costs were in preparing and what they brought along. And the prep area appraiser will look at that carefully. Once all of that is done, and we get the paperwork over to the appraisers, they get a couple of minutes to read it before the team comes out on stage. So we want to make sure that those tournament data forms are clear, readable, and we can't read the novel. Sometimes we have 3 minutes to read these things before the performance starts. So give us the chance, give the appraiser the opportunity with a clearly called out tournament data form so that we know what's going on. After their performance, which lasts 8 minutes, and during that 8 minutes, everything happens. The team choice elements, the story, the testing of the structure, everything happens within that 8 minutes. And then when the 8 minutes is up, well, let me first back up. The timekeeper announcer is going to say, team, you may begin now. Hits his stopwatch. 8 minutes later, that appraiser, that timekeeper announcer will holler, time's up. So after that, the appraisers will then come talk to the students about what did they do, how did it go for them. If they had something that was obvious it didn't work, the appraisers will say, well, what was it supposed to do? How is it supposed to work? What made you think it was going to work that way, and why didn't it work? And it becomes almost a sales issue with the team talking to the appraisers. If the team can make the appraisers understand what they were trying to do and can make them understand how it was supposed to work, let them go. Let them have it. but the team needs to talk to the appraisers in private. Team parents need to stand back. Once that's over and the appraisers have had enough, they're going to go back to the table to make their job of writing down the scores be a little easier on a horizontal surface. Then all hands on deck. Everybody, any team member, any audience member, anybody can come out on the stage and help the team get all this stuff off of there so it's ready for the next team. And then celebrate, because the team is probably going to be very relieved at that point. And by the way, so will your team managers. This is what that presentation area would look like. This is the way in. We've got, so once the, let's see if I can do something like this. So here is where the team will start. This is after they've checked in their structure an hour before the check-in time. They can do that. Once that's there, then the team comes in here dragging all their props over. This is 20 minutes before, or my preference, 30 minutes before. They'll come in here to the prep area. Off we go, prep area. And they'll talk to the prep area. And then they'll bring their things over here, kind of get it all into an area here by the launch line. And they're going to wait. And then the timekeeper announcer is going to, and then when all of this is cleared out from the previous team, the timekeeper announcer is going to say, okay, team, you may begin. And then the team gets all of this stuff and takes it out into here and puts it up and gets ready for their presentation. Sometimes teams are actually presenting as they are bringing their props in here to this area. But they are now, they've got their thing on here. They've got their structure into the tester base, probably, and the team can do this anytime they want. So they're able to start this anytime they'd like. They can wait to test their structure, or they can do it immediately. My preference and my recommendation is get your structure tested and do it as fast as you can. Wood structures are amazingly able to take a lot of impact load, but they will get weaker over time. By the way, in this presentation area, there's going to be a power cord available here. And that power cord then can be used by the team. We only guarantee to get it to the corner of the performance area. And if the team needs to have more so that they can set up their whatever needs the power over here, they need to get their own power cord, get it over here. All right, so have the team be prepared for that. We don't guarantee you that the tester base is going to be in this location. It could be anywhere. And so I try to tell people, no matter where you expect it to be, we're going to put it somewhere else. But generally speaking, we're going to put it up here in the area where the audience can see it well. By the way, you see the appraisers table here, and the appraisers table over here. That appraisers table is not where the appraisers sit. The appraisers are going to come over here and they're going to camp out right in the front. They're going to get the best seats in the house right here, and maybe they're sitting on the floor, maybe they bring a chair with them depending on how good and old their knees are. But the appraiser is going to be up here and they're going to be watching what's going on in the presentation area. So they can then get a full appreciation of the team and what they're doing. There are going to be also a couple of weight placement appraisers that are going to be over here. They're going to be kind of moving around whenever they need to. They watch the weights, they watch the tester base, they watch to see when the structure fails. And then, as I say, after the appraisers then talk to the kids in this area here, they can talk to them in there, adults stay out of the way. Then at that point, you can get all of this stuff here, get it out the door. And that's the best thing you can do, is get it out of there and get moving on, and that's good for everybody. So that's typically what a presentation area will look like. It's guaranteed to be at least 16 feet square, and it will have all of these features we just talked about. So it's minimum 16 feet square. It may be marked off, but typically not. But in our case in Colorado, I like to mark them off. I want them marked off generally so that the kids, sometimes we're presenting in a gymnasium, and smaller kids, particularly inexperienced teams or teams that are a little shy, or sometimes, the elementary school teams, they want to set up as far away from the appraisers as possible. It kind of drives us nuts when they do, but we have to, wherever they go, that's where we're going. We're going to go there and we're going to hear what they have to say. So they can use the entire presentation area, and tester base of weights will be usually towards the front where the audience can see them well if they can. And then teams cannot move or adjust the tester base. It's got to be where it is. And I told you before, we'll bring that 3-pronged AC power to the edge of the presentation area. Let's see, we're on 36. Mind if I continue on, Margaret? Would that be okay with you?
Yep, absolutely.
Good. I'll do a couple more slides here, and then I'll turn it back over to you. So, consult the rules of the road. Margaret talked about that already. Read the rules of the road. Quite honestly, it's usually over 50 pages long, and it's not fun reading it all time and again like you would with challenge. But there are some things in there that are going to be important, and it will also give you some guidance as to what things need to be included on the expense reports and so forth. So chemicals, electrical devices, dry ice, helium. Tournament officials, check with them at your local region and find out if you're able to use, especially dry ice and helium balloons. And then schools with no tolerance policies, just a wise thing to have no weapon looking props, especially those that look real or those that are true compound bows, and one of those showed up at a tournament one time. You know, we may do, okay? But we did not see a student draw back the compound bow and fire an arrow. It didn't work out that way. And proper eye protection, as Margaret explained before, team provides this eye protection, important stuff for us here. And it's got to be worn within 2 feet of within the 2-foot safety zone, and that's just to protect people from the flying debris that can fly out of this place. In fact, maybe it's not a bad idea. Now that I've got sound again, that I can actually drop one of those weights and have you hear what it sounds like. I would be thrilled if teams showed up with their own hearing protection. And I'm not talking those little foam things with stuff in your ear. I'm talking about the things that you'd use for shooting, or those that are used in industrial applications where people are trying to protect their hearing, the earmuff type things. Anything you can do to protect those kids' ears. I mean, you know, guys get to be my age, they've already lost most of their hearing anyway. But no, I really don't want to see kids lose hearing as a result of this. But I encourage it. I encourage it highly. Closed-toed shoes, any team members handling weights. And then there are going to be some location-specific considerations. Can't really say what those will be, but when you have a meeting at your school with the challenge masters, you'll have the ability to ask those questions. So here's our tournament schedule: February 24th, March 3rd, March 10th, March 17th. As you can see, March is a busy month. And we've got a lot of tournaments happening in there. April 7th, much earlier this year. Often the affiliate state tournament is in like the 3rd week of April. This year it's a lot earlier. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow teams to get prepared for the big global finals. Somebody's going to global finals, folks, and it could be you. And it's a lot of fun going there. I know a lot of us really look forward to it every year. So it's a lot of great time. These are your tournament dates. And we have some general clarifications that have come up here too. I want to make sure that I'm not overstepping my bounds here. And in the rules of the road, they give a clarification as to what kind of equipment can be exempt from use or exempt from note on the team's expense report form. So you can read this at your leisure when you go back to the YouTube recording and kind of stop here. You can read this. This general clarification is also available for you to look at on the website. And then there is another general clarification, and this was just last month. And it should read, design and create an event depictor that uses technical methods to visibly and or audibly depict the sudden event within the story. And I can't remember just how this differed from the way that the challenge is written, but I think it's visibly and or audibly depict the sudden. Nice the and or in there that makes that that was changed. So that could be it. I'm not sure. All right, and so those are the only general clarifications that we have. Now, except for number 3. And then this is a clarification of how the weights need to be released from the drop zone by removing hands from the weight. Any weight that's not dropped from the drop zone or is interfered with during free fall will not count towards the official weight held. Successfully dropped weights may not be repositioned after they've come to rest on the weight stack. What that means is, once it drops down on the weight stack, that's where it stays, no movement. And again, here is a place you can go for updates or general clarifications, right there. Right? And again, you'll be able to find this later on. And to request a clarification, here is the way you'll go about it. Go to www.idodi.org and you can move your cursor over Challenge, Program, drop down, Clarifications. So there are Team Challenges, Clarifications, drop down here, Drop Zone, new window opens, next page. Oh, sure. And then here is how you would submit that clarification. And here are the published clarifications right here. So you can read those at that location. So that's the place that we do that. And then, you know what? We have an expert at reading disclaimers on the broadcast tonight, and I would request that she read the disclaimer for you. And if you are reasonably entertained by such, I will give you just a quick audio and video of dropping a weight. So, Margaret, if you want to read this.
Sure. So this presentation and the comments presented during this training and associated webinars are based on the written challenge, but nonetheless represent a summary prepared by the Colorado Affiliate Challenge Masters. The presentation has not been reviewed by the Engineering Challenge International Challenge Masters or DI headquarters. If you are unsure or confused about something or think we're in error, please submit a clarification request. Back to the clarification request, the last date to submit clarifications is February 15th of 2018.
Okay. And
anybody have any questions? Actually, the questions should really be at the end. We should really give you some additional resources first, and then you can ask questions. Well, I think. So these are the additional resources from the IDODI, you know, the roadmap, the rules of the road, the challenge. Again, request clarifications before February 15th. The DI Destination Imagination blog. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, Instagram. Doesn't everyone, I guess. And here's another additional resource on how to build a tester base. You can actually find the pattern and the directions on how to build a tester base for whoever wants to build it at dicolorado.com. Scroll over to the resources and look for the PDF file on how to build a tester base. Again, this is not an interference for somebody to build the tester base for your team. We encourage it. We hope every team will have one or have access to one. One thing one of the challenge masters pointed out is that sometimes you'll find them at some schools that may have done this challenge before, teams in the past, and they may have one hanging around. Also, you can always email us because we sometimes know where there are some available. I mean, as an example, I have one in my garage that I'm happy to share. Additional resources and sources of materials. You can go to local stores and suppliers for different materials, the glue, the wood, and things like that. Colpar Hobbies, Caboose Hobbies, Thompson Hobbies. A really great resource for balsa wood is Specialized Balsa. There's their website. It's a great, it's also a really great field trip. I highly recommend. Everybody I've recommended do this field trip has said their teams loved it, and he just knows. Jake Zimmer's actually a regional challenge master or a judge. He's a judge, actually. And he really knows how to explain things to kids without interfering, and gives them a really good tutorial on kind of the properties of balsa, because he obviously deals in balsa, but he also understands testing and basically some basic principles of structure challenges. And they have I think it's just a fun, I would highly recommend if you're going to do a field trip, that's a really great one to do. You can also go to national chains, Hobby Lobby, Michael's, Home Depot, and Lowe's obviously have different materials. Balsa USA for an online, and National Balsa or other good resources for balsa. Cabela's, Bass Pro, Target, Walmart, Costco, the basics. Amazon is a good place to get latex-free rubber bands. They're not easily, you don't find them at the King Soopers usually, I don't believe, and so that's a great place to get things like latex-free rubber bands. Now maybe we have the questions. Or first we're going to get to hear the audio aid, and then you may have questions, if your ears aren't ringing.
Okay, so again, we have this drop zone here. It's 1.5 inches tall, and it's set down 1/2 inch below the top of the safety pole. Am I coming through okay, Margaret?
Yes.
You able to hear me? Okay, good. All right, so the pressure board is set on top of the fake structure in this case. Pressure board is set there, and then there's a 10-pound weight put on here. There's a 10-pound weight there. And what that's really intended to do is save the pressure board on the top from a lot of damage. So we put this on here, and then we can drop 5-pound and 10-pound weights. And the one thing that the teams don't want to do is hold it down here and monkey around trying to save the structure by not letting it drop. Get it into that drop zone. Team will want to get it to the bottom of the drop zone probably, and then they're going to want to make it obvious that it dropped from the drop zone. And I would recommend something like a 2-finger hold or something like this, so that and maybe there's 2 of them. And when coordinating 2 different team members, dropping this is going to be very difficult to do, because one guy's going to let go first, the other one's going to let go second. I don't know. Maybe they'll figure it out. Teams always do. They'll figure a way of doing it. But when it's time to drop it, and that's loud. So as I said, I'm a little sensitive about hearing loss, and I'd like to recommend that teams can use some hearing protection, find some hearing protection to do that. It's not especially expensive, but it's a good thing to have. Any other questions about the tester base here? Building tester base is not a big deal. It does take a little bit of material, a little bit of time, and it's a good thing to have if the team is going to be practicing, because there's no other way to get a good, effective testing unless we have the tester base built like this. Okay, so Margaret, any other questions that come up on the screen that we want to talk about?
Nora, I don't see any right now, but
Me neither.
Okay.
I think we're good.
do you have any questions after this? I mean, obviously, Jim is going to post this YouTube, and we gave you the other link to the last YouTube, but you can always email us. We've had a couple of email requests come in, and to the Affiliate Challenge Masters. Good idea to email everybody at once. If you go back up to the very first screen where we had all our email addresses, I would recommend emailing everybody at the same time, because sometimes, as an example, one of the Affiliate Challenge Masters is in finals right now, and sometimes, like, I was out of town last week, but I was 2 hours ahead, so I got it first. So anyway, but that way you have a better chance of getting somebody to respond pretty quickly. And I think we responded certainly within a few hours, maybe at least by the end of the day, probably. So feel free to.
Now it's time for our grading to happen. Now we're going to find out what everybody thinks about this. So if you're still on here, hopefully you're feeling a little better about this. And we'll see. We'll try to get all the votes in here before we close up the poll. All right. So I think at this point we're going to close the poll because we got the answer that we wanted to have. Wait till I share this with you. All right. Sharing results. What do you think? How's that look to you? So 100% thinks they feel a little bit better about the challenge, and that makes me feel good. So thank you very much. All right. Any questions? Send them on to us, and I have your email address, all of you attendees. So I'll send you out a link to tonight's broadcast so that you can get a look at it. As I say, you can use it. You can show it to your team. Again, there's nothing here that I don't want the team members to see. Any other closing remarks you've got, Margaret?
No, thanks for coming and come to the training on Saturday if you're around Denver.
Yes, it's at Dunston Middle School, and it's an all-day thing. And in the afternoon, team managers, we actually run a little bit of a building session where you can use, I'll bring along some wood and glues and things like that, and you can use that stuff to build some structures. And we'll test them for weight holding capabilities and all of that. So you're going to see that it really can happen. It can work. So you can feel comfortable that the team, that we don't have an impossible challenge, because quite honestly, at our last team manager session, we had a building session in the afternoon, and I was really very surprised that the team managers built some structures, and they were just floored that their structures held weight. And even though I swore that we wouldn't do so, we actually did drop some weights on them too, just to see what would happen. So I was pleased that things looked pretty good. All right, so if you have a chance to do that, that's great. If not, turn the team loose and just get them building something. And at first, when they're building, I would recommend that you don't worry too much about the rules. Don't worry too much about the weight. Don't worry too much about the sizes. Get them building something. And if they are building something and they see some success at building, they're going to really be enthusiastic about it. They're going to have some fun. And you start dropping some weights on here, it's going to be a great time. So I admire you and your teams for what I know you'll accomplish. Okay, no further questions. Any other comments? Nora, do you have comments? You've been kind of quiet over there.
No, thank you. Just enjoy the process.
Yes, there we go. And celebrate, right?
Thank you for attending, because actually the managers that attend these webinars and actually attend the trainings their teams do see more success because they've taken the time early on to get at least a feel for it and at least know where they can contact us if they have questions. So thank you very much for doing that for your team.
Yes, yeah, my thanks as well. Okay, well, we're going to close up from Denver, Colorado tonight. Thank you all, and have a good and safe night. And I hope that your teams do well. Give them the opportunity to be successful. They'll show you how it works. Okay, well, good night all. We're checking off at this point. Good night.